If you want to learn how to become a GRC analyst in 2026, this video is the only roadmap you need. Most people trying to break into cybersecurity are doing it the hard way. They're chasing certifications, trying to learn how to code, and spending months studying the things that have nothing to do with what's actually going to get them hired. And they wonder why they're not moving. GRC is different. It's the fastest and most realistic path into a six-figure cybersecurity career, especially if you're coming from a corporate or business background and you don't want to spend years becoming a technical engineer. I'm Sid, a senior admin who's spent about 2 months training myself to go from a $90,000 starting salary to well over $350,000 a year while being completely remote. And I've helped over a dozen people make this exact transition. And I know what the process actually looks like when it works. In this video, I'm going to give you a step-by-step breakdown of exactly how to become a GRC analyst in 2026, what to learn, what order to learn it in, how to prepare for interviews, and what to avoid so you don't waste your time. Let's get into it. Let's start with the most important question. What does a GRC analyst actually do day to day? Because the job description online usually makes it sound way more complicated than it really is. At a high level, GRC stands for governance, risk, and compliance. But in practice, the job usually revolves around a few core activities. You'll spend time reviewing security controls, making sure the company's systems and processes align with certain security standards. You'll work with different companies across the company, such as engineering, IT, legal, or operations, to collect evidence that security practices are actually being followed. You'll help the organization for audits, whether that's a SOC 2 audit, an ISO 27001 certification, or a customer security review. You'll help identify and track risks, which are areas where the security controls may be missing or weak. So the work is much more business-facing than it is technical. You're not sitting there coding or hacking systems. You're helping the organization prove that its security program is functioning properly. And that's exactly why companies hire GRC analysts, because security controls only matter if you can demonstrate they exist and are working in the background. Now, let's talk about why GRC is such a strong entry point into cybersecurity right now. First, you don't need to know how to code. A lot of cybersecurity roles require deep technical skills: scripting, networking, threat detection, reverse engineering. GRC does it. Instead, it focuses on understanding security processes, documentation, and risk management. Second, the demand is growing rapidly. Companies are facing more regulations, more customer security reviews, and more pressure to prove they are taking security seriously. Every time a company wants to pass an audit, sign a major customer contract, expand internationally, or go public, they need strong compliance and risk programs, which means they need GRC professionals. And when you compare GRC to other entry-level cyber paths, like a SOC analyst, a pen tester, or even a help desk person, it's more accessible and more stable than any of those roles. That's why people are starting their cybersecurity careers here. One of the biggest myths about cybersecurity is that you need a technical background to get started. For GRC, that is usually not the case. A lot of backgrounds translate well into this role. For example, corporate operations, finance or accounting, legal or compliance, project management, administrative roles, consulting, or even business analysis. Why is that though? Because GRC is heavily focused on documentation, process, communication, and risk awareness. These are the skills many professionals already have. Hey, hope you guys are enjoying this video so far. Real quick, if you want to skip the trial and error of trying to break into cybersecurity and learn the exact GRC framework that I use to build a multi-six-figure remote career, then click the first link in the description and check out the program. Inside it, I walk you step by step through how governance, risk, and compliance and third-party risk actually work, the skills companies really care about, and how to position yourself for real cybersecurity roles without wasting time on things employers don't value. This is the exact approach I've used for myself and the same system I've used to help dozens of other people get into GRC. Everything is laid out very clearly on the page so you can see if it's a good fit for you. Now let's get back to the video. Now, what don't you need before starting? You don't need coding, you don't need deep technical networking knowledge, and you don't need to understand every cybersecurity tool. These things can help later, but they are not prerequisites. What matters more is understanding how security programs operate inside organizations. Now let's talk about the exact learning path. The biggest mistake beginners make is trying to learn everything at once. Instead, focus on 4 stages. Step 1, learn the language. Start by understanding core GRC concept. Things like security controls, audits, evidence, risk, exceptions, remediation. These terms show up in every compliance conversation. Once you understand the language, everything else becomes easier. Step 2, learn 1 or 2 frameworks. You don't need to learn 10 frameworks. Start with NIST, then learn the basics of SOC 2. Since many companies are preparing or maintaining SOC 2 compliance, understanding how frameworks organize security controls is extremely important. Step 3. Understand the security program lifecycle. Most security programs follow the same general structure. Policies define expectations, controls enforce those policies, evidence proves controls are working, audits verify everything. And if issues are found, remediation happens. Understanding that flow is critical. Step 4. Practice documentation. GRC involves a lot of writing and documentation. Practice things like writing simple policy summaries, drafting control descriptions, and lastly, creating risk statements. These are the exact skills used in real GRC work. 5. Certifications can help, but they are often misunderstood. Many people think they need multiple certifications before applying for jobs. That's not true. For entry-level GRC roles, certifications are optional, not mandatory. If you choose to get one, look for certifications that demonstrate foundational cybersecurity knowledge. Avoid spending thousands of dollars chasing certifications without understanding how GRC actually works. Experience with concepts and scenarios is way more valuable than certifications alone. 6. How to build real job experience. This is where a lot of people get stuck. They think, I can't get the job because I don't have experience. But the reality is you can build practice experience before you ever get hired. For example, you can practice analyzing security policies. You can review example SOC 2 controls. You can simulate audit evidence collection scenarios. You can also look at your previous work experience and translate it into GRC knowledge. For example, if you handle documentation, approvals, risk assessments, process reviews, or regulatory work, these skills often map directly into GRC responsibilities. The key is learning how to frame your experience properly. Not every cybersecurity job is the same. When searching for entry-level GRC roles, look for titles like GRC Analyst, Security Compliance Analyst, Risk Analyst, Third-Party Risk Analyst, Information Security Analyst, which is a little more GRC focused, but read the job descriptions carefully. Look for roles focused on compliance frameworks, security documentation, audit preparation, risk management. These are strong signals that this is a very GRC focused position. But the big advantage of GRC, it is the most remote friendly path in cybersecurity. How to prepare for a GRC interview. GRC interviews are often scenario-based. Instead of thinking about purely technical questions, interviewers want to see how you think. For example, they might ask you, how would you prepare a company for an audit? What would you do if a control failed? How do you handle missing evidence? How would you track remediation for a security finding? The key to sounding credible is speaking the language of GRC. Talk about things like controls, risk management, evidence collection, audit readiness. The biggest mistake candidates make is giving generic cybersecurity answers, instead of showing they understand how compliance programs actually work. One of the biggest questions people ask is, how long does this usually take? For most people, the timeline looks something like this. The first week is spent learning the basics of GRC concepts and frameworks. Then comes practice, understanding audit flows, controls, and evidence. After that, you start applying for roles and preparing for interviews. For most people, the entire process is about a month or two, if they stay focused. What slows people down is usually overstudying or chasing too many certifications instead of focusing on practical knowledge. 10. Landing your first GRC role is just the beginning. In your first year on the job, you build credibility and leverage. Focus on learning how your company's security program actually operates. Pay attention to the frameworks they follow, how audits are managed, how risks are tracked, and how different teams work together. The faster you understand the security program lifecycle, policies, controls, evidence, and remediation, the faster you'll become valuable on the team. Once you've built that foundation, your career can grow quickly. Many GRC professionals move into roles like this: Senior GRC Analyst, Senior Security Risk Manager, Compliance Program Leader, Third-Party Risk Management Manager, Security Consultants. And because GRC work is largely documentation analysis and coordination, it's the best area to find remote work, and multiple areas with remote work. Over time, many professionals use their experience to move into higher paying roles, consulting positions, or even managing multiple positions at the same time. The key is getting that first role and learning how security programs operate and building the experience that companies value. Once you're inside the field, opportunities expand quickly. That's a full step-by-step process for becoming a GRC analyst in 2026. If you follow what I laid out here, you're going to be ahead of the majority of people trying to break into this field, because most of them are still following advice that doesn't work. The path isn't complicated, it's just not well explained, but now you have it. If this helped, make sure you subscribe. This entire channel is built around helping you break into cybersecurity the right way, land high-paying remote roles, and eventually learning how to stack multiple roles using AI. Let automation do the work for you and take your income further than a traditional career ever could. See you in the next one.